Here we are back in the kitchen for the first time ever in the kitchen with Trevor, cooking with Trevor. We have a celebrity guest chef here. This is Captain DeRosa, who actually in his former life was a real chef. So he's been very popular for many, many years around the firehouse, serving us up his world famous chicken parm recipe. So we have got Captain DeRosa is going to show us how to make his famous chicken parm. We're going to start out with the gravy, or the sauce, as you will. He was walking us through some of our ingredients. I only have one mic, so feel free to talk, but I don't know if the mic's going to pick up on you. But we were talking about some sweet onions, or Vidalia onions, versus your white onion. It gives you a sweeter flavor. I like it's not nearly as acidic, and because an acidic onion can really ruin your flavor profile, but sweet onions are much more mild. So you want to get those yellow onions or the sweet onions, Vidalias, if you can find them. We did get dried basil today instead of the actual plant, but that would be preferred. If you can get the actual plant, use your fresh basil versus your dried. Now, your dried versus your fresh, you're going to have a different measurement. Dried is more concentrated, right? It's a little bit stronger, so you use less if you are using dried if the recipe calls for fresh herbs. So you'd want to use less. We've got, we got crushed tomatoes. We got 3 cans of crushed tomatoes, so we're making a large volume. He's got some tomato paste in here, salt and pepper. We got a little bit of canola oil, a pinch of sugar, probably going to go in there too. And I talked him out of, he had a jar of that pre-done garlic here, but I talked him out. I said I'll offer my services to get my hands stinky, and we will crush up and mince up some fresh garlic. So that's pretty much where we're going to start. Is that right? So we're going to chop some onions. We'll get the sauce in the pan, probably a drizzle of oil. Did you want to roast the garlic first?
No, actually, we'll mince it, and that'll go in with the onions.
But you'll go ahead and get the onions started first. All right, so what we're going to do right now is just chop up and prep. But, oh, I almost forgot. You want your fresh parsley. Italian parsley. You can go flat leaf or the curly, whichever you prefer, or whatever looks best when you're in the shop picking up your ingredients. So we're going to have the sauce. We've got chicken over here. We're going to have pasta, and I'm going to top it off with my homemade garlic bread. So stick with us. We'll be right back. So when you're chopping your herbs, do you worry about the stems so much?
Some of the bigger ones I'll take out as you chop them. The flat leaf is, you chop it up with the stems. Again, it's all being sauteed, so it's going to be...
The texture will be softened, yeah. So if you end up with some stems in there, it won't...
Yeah, it won't... you're not going to see them if you chop it up correctly. And a lot of the flavor still in the stems too. The smaller ones, not the big thick stems.
Right.
Any larger ones I'll remove, along with any leaves that are discolored from
just wilting and older leaves. So you kind of cherry picking as you go through the bunch. Yep. And you're going to do that whole bunch?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah,
so we're doing...
This will cut this right here. It looks like a lot, but it'll probably be maybe a quarter of a cup.
Yeah, any of your green leafy greens will reduce down when it gets in the heat. We're using about 3 tablespoons of fresh garlic with the 2 onions as we start to put this together. And also interesting to note that some people don't know that onions and garlic are cousins. They're in the same family. So for those of you just wanting to pick up on a tidbit of trivia, there you have it. So we're just gonna finish up chopping. We'll get a little oil and some heat in the pot, and then we'll put these vegetables in there and we'll soften things up and get our sauce started.
Using a basic sauce pot, roughly 3 tablespoons or so of oil.
Just enough to coat the bottom of the pan and make everything. Now your oil usually expands a little bit once the heat gets to it.
So we're gonna put all the onions in there and start to sweat those.
You call it sweat those?
Sweating them, and sweating is a cooking method. It's a low heat, and you're going to cook these till they're translucent without browning. In the culinary world, that's called sweating the vegetables.
Okay, I always make it clear. So you're gonna, right now they are very white, so as they start to heat, and they'll lose their color and become almost translucent, yes. So that's called sweating, I didn't know that.
So that'll take a few minutes. And then we'll add the garlic when they're about halfway done, because garlic cooks a lot faster.
Yes, and you don't want your garlic to brown because then it gets rancid. Let's just go back a little bit what we were just talking about. We were talking about your the sugar. There's sugar over there, and one of the things about sugar is that it takes out the tinniness of your canned tomato sauce. So
tomatoes are very, very acidic. Especially through the canning process. So the sugar and also the use of the sweet onions helps offset that. And helps balance the acidity in the final product.
So it takes a little bit of that sting out of the tomato. And then you were saying...
these are all very, very simple ingredients. There's no preservatives. And for your money, you can make a lot more sauce over buying, say, ragu.
Right, the Classico.
Yeah.
Even on sale, it's still going to be more expensive than making your own. We're using the crushed tomatoes, and I was telling Captain DeRosa that I use puree in mine, but it's amount of preference. You could use whole steamed and crush them yourself. You could use diced if you like it even thicker, but for this application for the parm, we were saying a smoother consistency of the sauce is going to be better. So he's using the crushed, and he's going to use 3 cans of crushed, and then that can of tomato paste, which will give it more of a tomatoey flavor and give that sauce that nice smooth consistency, which will stick to the top of the chicken and not be too runny. So that's why we're gonna do that. So he is softening up or sweating these onions, and they're starting to lose their color a little bit now. It's a pretty large volume of onion, so it might take a minute, and then we're gonna add in that garlic and get this sauce going. So, but some other tidbits for you to understand why it's important making your own versus buying the already pre-made stuff is you get to add what you prefer in it, how you like it, you control the flavor, and it's cheaper.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Japanese, the bigger crumb.
All right, okay, so we're talking breadcrumbs here, and he said he likes this style, the Italian, with the flavoring already in it. And you want to get the regular breadcrumbs versus the panko, because the panko does what?
Panko is it's considered a Japanese breadcrumb, and it's a larger, each crumb itself is actually a larger texture, and it's for a different application than what we're using.
Okay, so this will be more your classic style of breading. We're going to show you when we get to that point. We're going to do flour and egg wash, and then into the breadcrumbs. One of the other things you can do is after I show you how to make your garlic bread, if you have leftover garlic bread, which I normally don't, but if you do, then you can make your own breadcrumbs, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on in the process.
So we've been about 15 minutes. Yep. See how they're starting to clear? Yep, and not as white anymore. And our garlic is about 3 to 3.5 tablespoons of fresh garlic. We like the garlic, so that's good if there's a little extra.
Garlic cooks very quick, so you want to cook it. Term is to aroma. So when you start to smell it, it's pretty much done. You don't want to burn it because it'll ruin the final sauce.
Right. consistency you're looking for as to whether or not you're adding more water. Yeah, go ahead. We got
parsley.
okay, the whole bunch parsley.
Yep. Basil.
A couple of what, 3-4 tablespoons of basil.
Yep, of chopped basil.
Oh man, that's looking good and smelling good. Those onions and garlic always makes the kitchen smell proper. All right, that looks good. So simmer about an hour or so, then we're going to turn it off, let it rest, and then when we get ready to put everything together before we pop it in the oven, we'll heat it back up. Okay, so we have let the sauce simmer, I don't know, an hour or two maybe this afternoon. It's been sitting over here on the stove chilling. Now we're getting ready to prep the chicken, and that's the key ingredient here in chicken parm. So what Captain DeRosa is doing is we're getting a good sized breasts here, and he has trimmed a little bit of the fat off, and instead of just butterflying it because they're such large breasts, he's kind of doing a medallion slice here. As you can see, what's happening is he has taken a single breast and probably cut it into thirds, maybe even quarters if he can get it all out. So what we're gonna do once he's done that, you get these smaller fillets off of the breast. We're gonna pound it flat, and it will tenderize the chicken, and of course you're creating more volume as well. So you start out with 4 breasts, you end up with 12 or 15, 16, something like that. So you're feeding a larger volume of people, plus you're not ending up with a really thick breast. They'll cook evenly if everything's the same thickness. All right, so here we are at the prep station getting the chicken breaded. We've already flattened everything nicely, so we got some small medallions we're working with. First, it goes in the flour, and then we give it a egg wash or an egg bath. As you can see, our master chef, Captain DeRosa, has got the technique where he's got one hand that gets gummy and sticky, and the other hand stays dry. So that's just a little tidbit for you first timers out there. It will get messy. Anything that you have flour that gets wet when it gets in the egg, it will stick to you really badly. So he's just got the one hand he's doing the wet stuff with, and then the other hand stays dry. And then our finished product over here is just we're laying out on a cookie sheet. We're gonna get ready to do that. Pan sear that. Just give it a good toasting on the top and bottom. Start that chicken cooking, and then finish it in the oven. Going on over here is Captain DeRosa has warmed up some oil for us. It's just canola oil, and it's probably maybe a 1/4 inch deep, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. You don't want it too deep because your chicken breasts have now been pounded flat, so they're going to be thin. So you only want a little bit of oil in there. But we're going to heat that up. That way when you put it in, it starts cooking immediately. So you want to go ahead and preheat the oil. When the oil starts making little waves around in it like that, when you can see the heat moving around the oil in the pan, then it's pretty much warmed up and ready to go. What the pasta we have chosen is the gemelli pasta. Well, actually, Captain DeRosa chose this, but that's the gemelli. And as we were talking about earlier, certain pastas are made in such a way to make it superior for particular kinds of sauces. Your penaise and things like that are good for cream sauces. This is good for smooth tomato sauces and things of that like. So try some different pastas on your creations and see what you like better, or you can look it up online to find out what is recommended for your particular kind of dish. Okay, so you can see we got some heat in the oil. We're putting a handful of cutlets in there, but we are leaving some space. You don't want to crowd the pan. If you crowd the pan, you're going to end up robbing the heat, and then you'll have to wait until the heat rises back again so that you can do your second batch. So if you don't crowd the pan, you'll be able to maintain that heat as you cycle them through. Couple of minutes aside, maybe.
Yeah, when they're golden brown, we'll flip them.
Golden brown, and we'll flip them over. So you'll take a peek. Your time is going to change when you first start out. You're going to have one type of temperature, and by the time you get to batch 2 or 3, you're going to have a different temperature. So you will need to adjust as you go, and that's it. So we'll wait until we get a couple of batches out, and then we're ready for the next stage, and we'll come back. All right, so first I wanted to show you real quick about the sauce and see how much it has reduced down over the course of simmering for a couple hours and then resting. Again, we'll reheat that as we apply it to the cutlets once they are done. As you can see, they're cooking here, a little frying done, and these are the finished products, so that's about where you want them. Not quite totally done. You can tell by the tenacity when you squeeze them if they're still a little soft. They'll start to harden up as they cook, but you don't want them cooked all the way through because we're going to finish it in the oven. And there's the undone ones there. Well, over here, I got another gentleman helping us out. Hey, Firefighter Mills is going to hook us up with my garlic bread recipe. So what we're doing, he's going to shred up some Parmesan cheese. Got about a half stick of butter and about 4 cloves of that garlic. And we put it on our French loaf. And we'll do a little olive oil, a little bit of basil, oregano. You can use Italian seasoning. Speaking of Italian seasoning, so we'll come back to the bread when we get ready to put that on. We got water going for the pasta, and we were talking about the breadcrumbs. The breadcrumb wash, the egg wash, and the flour that you use for the chicken, you can use that for pretty much anything. You can use it for chicken, shrimp, fish, anything that you would normally fry. That's pretty much the go-to 1, 2, 3 for that. We use the Italian style breadcrumbs along with another can of the herb and garlic for today's breading. But that's them as they start to work out. He's flipped this batch. We're about to sling another batch in there to finish this off, and we'll be back when we show you what it looks like right before it goes in the oven. Okay, we are back. So we've had a chance to prep the chicken, lightly browned. We're gonna do it in some baking dishes before we put it in the oven. So we're gonna put a little sauce in the bottom there. That'll keep it from sticking. Then we'll put the chicken on, then a little more sauce, and then some mozzarella cheese goes on top. Everybody knows what the chicken parm is like, but this is how you'll build it yourself. So we've been prepping the oven, finishing up the last batch of the chicken, and we got the sauce. We'll warm that back up in a minute, and we're getting the pasta water ready. All right, back in the kitchen here. We've got the parm is ready to go. Like I said, we started out with a layer of sauce. Then you've got your chicken on top, and then a mound of mozzarella. That'll go in the oven about 350 till it melts and the chicken is cooked through. We're waiting on the water to come up to boil. All I did was melt some butter and wait for that aroma and that garlic to kick up. As soon as you can smell that, then your garlic and your butter is done. I'm just gonna spoon this out over the French loaf, spreading it out generously with the garlic. This is the other thing about making your own, is you can decide how much garlic, how much butter you're gonna use. If you want a little bit less, if you're watching the old waistline, you can trim it back a little bit and use a little bit of olive oil instead of the butter. But you do want the flavor, because the butter and the olive oil work in concert to make this bread far superior than any of that frozen stuff that you're going to get. And again, I highly recommend always mincing your own fresh garlic and using fresh herbs if at all possible, instead of your pre-packaged, pre-bottled stuff. So I got a nice spread here. Are you ready to go in?
As soon as the pasta goes in.
Okay. So I'm just finishing this up here. I know they can't really see details, but there's not too much to see other than I'm very gently scooping out my garlic and butter out of the Teflon pan. So we don't want to scrape out of Teflon, because Teflon's bad. Okay, Teflon's bad. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a couple of dried herbs. I got a little bit of oregano here. Just a quick sprinkle across the top. Just your classics. If you have Italian, just regular Italian seasoning, you can use just that. I like to mix a little bit of basil, a little bit of oregano, just enough to give it a little bit of that authentic flavor profile that you like with the Italian. Then of course I'm gonna come back, just a quick drizzle of olive oil around the edges. That'll help brown the corner and the edge of the bread, and then a quick little drizzle down the center. And one lap around the track, and then we'll zigzag down the middle, just enough to keep it moist. And then a sprinkle of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. And that is all you need for this great garlic bread recipe. It'll take about 10 minutes in that oven. Same heat that you're gonna do the parm on, and you can do that. Once the parm comes out, the bread can go in as you're finishing up your pasta, and like I said, a little practice, and you can get your timing dialed in just right and have everything come to the table hot all at the same time. And that's the trick. Okay, so that's it for the garlic bread. And like I said, if you do end up with leftover, you can use that for breadcrumbs, to use for frying chicken, fish, or whatever. I like to put it in my meatball mix, or you can put it in meatloaf, or anywhere else that you might use a regular breadcrumb. You can use old chopped up leftover, I should say, not old, but leftover garlic bread, and you can crunch it up in a blender, put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer, and just have it ready for any of your other recipes that you might have. Okay, so we have completed the masterpiece. Thank you very much, Captain DeRosa, in walking us through how to make the world famous chicken parm. We've got the cutlets ready to go. We got our sauce over here. Pasta is draining in the sink, and we'll marry that all together with our fresh garlic bread, and we're gonna have an authentico Italian meal. So try this at your house. It's a people pleaser, and try it at home. Remember the steps, and if you have any questions, you can either contact me or definitely talk to the master here, Captain DeRosa. I'll answer any questions that you have. So stay safe, be healthy, and we'll see you next time right here back in the kitchen.